And today, everybody, I've got a very special guest with me. Her name is Hala Taha. It's very musical, amazing name. And with that, for today's episode, this is a special episode because she is an expert podcaster who's been in radio and has been like doing this type of stuff for much longer than I have. And she's grown one of Apple, I believe. Is that right? Apple's top podcasts?
Yeah,
Apple's
How
top
To podcast.
Amazing. How do you podcast? Is that what you said? Like that's the name of the podcast?
It's a How To podcast.
Yes. And it's Young and Profiting, right? That's the
Yes.
fantastic. Wonderful. All right. And Hala Taha, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, just working and trying to relax this weekend at the same time.
Fantastic. Yeah. And this is extra work for you. So I appreciate your time since, you got that big podcast to run and, you've got a big career and everything. So, I wanted to bring you on to get your insight because I've had an opportunity. I remember, we connected at some point when we worked at HP or HPE. And I think I was just like looking people up on LinkedIn who worked there. But, over that time, I've had the opportunity to like see some people like pop up and then out of nowhere, it's like they got great things going on. And with that, I'm excited to have you on. And can you share a little bit about, what that overnight success has looked like for you?
Yeah. So it wasn't an overnight success. It definitely took probably about 10 years. I started my career when I was in college. I took an internship at Hot 97. It's the #1 hip hop and R&B station in the world. And at the time, it was huge. Under Angie Martinez. She's known as a voice of New York for those who don't know her. And so I worked there for about 3 years. I actually took a temporary leave from college to work there and follow my dreams. And then I started a website where I had 50 female bloggers under me. We were called the Sorority of Hip Hop. And during that time period, I had online radio shows with the girls, some of the main girls, and we used to interview celebrities and things like that. And also while I worked at Hot 97, I used to also do commercials on air and help with the production of the radio shows, and also had my own online radio shows with some of the DJs that are actually really famous DJs now. And after that, I went into corporate, and I never thought I would hop on a mic again. I had to shut down my blog site. I can get into the details if you'd like, if you want to dig deeper into some of this. But I ended up shutting down my website after I didn't get a reality TV show on MTV, and I was devastated. So I shut down my site, and I got my MBA, and I went into corporate. And I started at Hewlett Packard, like you mentioned, and kind of rose up the ranks there. And I really thought I would never get on a mic again. I thought that my broadcasting career was over. I thought, I tried it out when I was younger. I almost was a celebrity on MTV. I almost this, almost that, and kind of gave up. And then I remember 4 years into my corporate career, I was starting, something happened where I was supposed to be president of this employee resource group. And I was really excited about it. I was supposed to be leading 7,000 young employees at the company across the world. And I didn't get it, even though I was the most qualified. And I was devastated about that again. And with that devastation and being upset with the company for not choosing me and not giving me that opportunity to share my voice, I had the idea of starting a podcast. And that was 4 years into my corporate career. And I decided I'm going to start Young and Profiting podcast. Everybody told me the podcast market was saturated. Everybody told me I was too old, even though I was young, and that it was too late for me. And I had my opportunity, and it didn't work out. And I was going to sacrifice this amazing career that I had, worked so hard for. And a lot of people were opposed to me starting the podcast, a lot of my loved ones, and I just did it. And now we're a #1 how-to podcast on Apple. And I had all the right skills to start a podcast. I knew radio, I knew marketing, I knew a lot of different things that when you put those puzzle pieces together, it makes for a really unique quality show. And I did it. And it wasn't an overnight success.
Yeah. And, that's why I think it's so important, and I didn't mean like overnight success, like, you are an overnight success in the sense that like, I meant that in the sense of to realize the importance of that. Although you might see somebody pop up like on the newsfeed, like I saw you start talking about your podcast, over this past year and how it like rose to number one. And like, it appears like it's overnight success, but I had the opportunity to follow your stories. So I'm so glad that you're able to be on here and share that. Like, it wasn't like from the radio shows to all of that and building those reputations. What I also think is cool is, hearing this more about how you had the opportunity to work with so many DJs and so many radio personalities. And, it's almost like, you're around the people who end up like, growing together, kind of like that,
Totally.
Yeah. Like that. What's that movie with like Tom Cruise and all those famous actors? It was like the Outsiders, and almost all the actors in there got like successful.
Yeah, they're all like super successful. I know, it's so funny. A lot of the people that were interning for Angie Martinez, like when I was interning, that's if you're from New York, you may have heard of like DJ Drewski and DJ Juanito, and like those were all the people I was doing radio shows with, and now they have their own radio shows at Hot 97. And so I was almost on that path. I was almost going to be an online personality at Hot 97. It's just things didn't work out that way.
Yeah. Okay. So I'd like to hear a little bit about that reality show, because that's so interesting. Was it something you were producing, or were you looking to get on a reality show?
Yeah, so when I had this website, we were called the Sorority of Hip Hop, and we were huge in the tri-state area. So New York, New Jersey, we used to host parties, host radio shows. We had one of the top hip hop and entertainment news sites in the world. And so we were like popping, especially on Twitter and things like that. I had like a decent following on Twitter. We had 50 girls who would, every time we put out a blog, it would tweet a celebrity. And so they would retweet us. And so we would get a lot of visibility because it'd be like 50 girls tweeting a celebrity, and nobody was doing that. We were the first ones to do that, and then all the blog sites started to do that too. And so we were like, had a lot of momentum and had a lot of visibility. And so MTV scouted us twice for our own reality TV show, and so did Oxygen and lots of other shows. And I was actually in talks with Mona Scott. She was begging me to be on Love and Hip Hop, and I chose MTV over that. And so that's like, looking back, I'm like, look at Cardi B now. What if I had been on Love and Hip Hop? What would my life be like now? It either would have been like horrible or like amazing. So it's like, who knows what would have happened, but I turned that opportunity down. Yeah. But nonetheless, MTV asked us to shoot a pilot. So first they did that when I first started this blog site. So imagine I'm, 24 years old, and MTV is approaching me for a reality TV show. That's every 24-year-old's dream. And it was right when I started my website, so 3 months in, and it was a small pilot. We didn't get it, but we didn't care, because we were like, it's 3 months in, MTV already wants us to have a reality TV show. Let's keep going, because obviously we're doing something right. So it wasn't devastating at all. Then 2 years in, MTV reached back out. And at this point, we had been building and really like had a strong foundation in the hip hop community. And MTV was super interested in us and was more like, you guys got the show. We signed contracts. They were already paying us. We shot for a whole summer. They got us a studio on Broadway. Like, think about Real World, where they set it up all crazy with like signs and neon signs. And so like, that's what we had. And it was awesome. We had our hair and makeup done every day. We had camera crews following us around. They were filming us at my house at dinner. We were having cat fights. We did like a choreographed show.
Were the cat fights, were those scripted?
With the girls.
Cat fights?
Some of them, like, yeah. we were purposely trying to fight with each other to come up with a good show. And so me and another girl, I was the president, and then my vice president, Melissa Sweets, who's like one of my best friends still, we always had tension, because she was like, always would she was the one that would like kind of be the lead in terms of hosting parties. Like, that was her thing, like to host parties and like be out there. And I was more like the nerd, like getting the blog site and doing the SEO and training the girls.
Yeah.
And I was still outgoing and would go to the parties, but like that was her main thing. And so we would always fight about that, like who's actually bringing in the money, because we would make money from the events, but the website was like the visibility. So it was like just stuff like that. And one thing led to another. We filmed for 3 months. We thought we were going to be celebrities. We thought we were going to be the next Jersey Shore. It was right after Jersey Shore ended, and it was like the natural, like, could have been. It was when MTV was really big, not MTV now. So we were so excited. And then I remember Tiffany, our producer, called me up and was like, "Hala, they didn't pick your show. I'm really sorry." And I'm like, again, like, and then I ended up shutting down the website. And stopping the Sorority of Hip Hop, because I thought, how long can I do the Sorority of Hip Hop? I was like, I just felt like I was getting too old, and I felt a lot of pressure having 50 girls under me, all looking at me to give them fame and success. And I thought I could do it for myself, but to bring 50 girls along the journey, and I'm so just inexperienced in terms of managing people. And it taught me a lot in terms of leadership and managing people, but it was just too much pressure. So I shut it down and I went and got my MBA. So that's what happened there.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds like just in a period of like 2 or 3 years that you went from, doing these radio shows to having like a potentially huge reality show that you were going to be like running almost like as
I
a
was the star. I was the lead. I was getting paid like 3 times more than everybody else. I was the star of the show.
wow. Okay. And so I didn't quite catch like what was all the other 50 people, because I've seen reality shows and they're like, maybe a group of 10 or 20. What did you?
Oh, so the reality TV show, only like 5 girls were signed. I had 50 bloggers working for me, female bloggers. So the Sorority of Hip Hop was all about female empowerment in the entertainment industry. So the girls were from Complex or VH1, or they worked at a record label, or they were fashion bloggers, or makeup artists. Like it was like all like kind of artsy girls in the industry who wanted a platform. And so they would blog about their expertise, whether that was music, whether that was whatever. And then some of the girls also hosted radio shows with me. And then they were all like attractive young girls. And so we used to host parties. And so like DJ Camilo, Funkmaster Flex, all those people used to hire us to host their parties with them. And so we would be on all the flyers and do all the social media promotion, and then go to the party and like talk on the mic and get people hyped up. And so like that's what we did. And that's why having 50 girls, some would blog, some would come to the parties. It was just like a movement. I had a movement under me.
Yeah, that's incredible. Okay. And also, so I noticed that you were talking about how you also had a lot of technical expertise. I mean, to start a blog, and mentioned that this was before like even Hewlett Packard. So maybe at like the peak of blogging, or did you start like kind of
Yeah, it
like
was the
near?
peak. It was in the beginning and peak of blogging. Totally. And that's also why I shut it down, because blogging started to like lose steam really fast, and I felt like it wasn't worth it anymore. So I did it right when blogs were like popping, or a little bit before that.
Yeah, that's amazing that you're able to catch those trends. Because even at the podcasting, it sounds like even though it was starting to like get really filled up. I think when did you start? Like 5 years ago, or
For Young and Profiting
yeah.
Podcast, I started 2 years ago.
Wow. Okay. And you've been building up your reputation over time and doing all that. So to reach the top in just 2 years, that is absolutely phenomenal. And for anybody listening, because I get lots of messages from like random podcasters, and I think they just want to promote their their events or something. But when you're talking to podcasters, what would be something that, like, if you had to put up a billboard, and I'm taking this question from Tim Ferris, he sends this out on his like Tools of Titans. I don't know if you've ever read that book.
Yeah.
But I think one of the questions he says, if you were to put something on a billboard, a sign, a message to people, what would it be? So specifically for you, like if you were to, help out if you were to put out a billboard for like new podcasters, what might you say on there?
Yeah, I would say that it is 50% production, 50% promotion. So I think people really skip out on the promotion side. And I think that I've been so successful because I was able to merge my marketing skills with my production skills and really make a splash on LinkedIn. And I just kind of know how to market things and stand out. And I think that a lot of people, they record maybe amazing podcasts, but then they actually don't promote it. And then it's obviously the quality of the show. So like, if it's an interview, like, have you really done your research? I do 10 to 20 hours of research per guest on my show. And that's why I'm able to secure such really high caliber guests, because I don't waste their time. And I also promote the heck out of them, and they know it, and they see it with the past guests that I've had on. And so they're happy to come on the show. And so I think that it's a mix between promotion and quality content. But like I said, I think a lot of people, there's a lot of podcasters out there who have great content and who are not getting their name out there. They think that people are going to magically find their show, and that doesn't happen. You have to build your audience one by one until you reach that momentum, until you reach that tipping point where now it's, for me, I'm not doing so much of the one-on-one outreach because it's reached a critical mass where now word of mouth is happening. Now people are sharing my stuff on social media. And so like that's kind of happening on its own. Whereas before, I really was targeting people one by one. Please listen to my podcast. I have a new podcast. I think it's quality. And then people would like it because it was. And the rest is history.
Yeah, that is some great advice. Like I could see that on a bill right now, like 50 podcasting, 50% production, 50% promotion. That's such great advice to follow. And I think on the other element of it, doing the research on the people, can you expand a little bit more on that? Because it sounds like that's such a crucial part of finding the right guests, finding the right people, and not just like finding them, but like showing that you can add value to the conversation. Can you go in a little bit about that? Like what type of research?
Yeah, so right now I have a research team, but before it was all on my own. And basically what we do is I have a template that is a basic template, like what is their career journey? What did they do now? What are some of their biggest failures? What are their key topics? And like that's kind of the skeletons of the format. In terms of other ways that I study is I listen to all the other interviews that they've been on. I read their book. I read their book summaries if I don't have time. I read their book reviews, the bad reviews, the good reviews, see what other people are saying. And I try to really get a feel for the guest before I even start thinking about the questions I'm going to ask. I think about what have they said over and over again that their core fans that might be searching for them on a podcast, what have they said already that I don't want to talk about? Maybe I'll bring it up and summarize it rather than them going into it for 15 minutes. And how can I dig deeper so that it's something new and interesting? I think some of my podcasts, or most of my podcasts, I probably have 50 questions drafted before I sit down with the person. Not that I'll go over all of them, but that way, no matter where the conversation goes, I kind of have a very smart question to ask. We even think about what they'll answer with. Most of the times when I'm asking a guest a question, I know exactly what they're going to say back because I've heard them in their interviews. I know their perspective. It might be a specific story that I'm asking about. And then I kind of know exactly what to say afterwards or how to lead it into the next question because I've done so much research. And so I think that my show really stands out. And I think what I'm doing is exactly what Jordan Harbinger and Tim Ferris, like those type of guys are doing. I've never been on a podcast where I don't know everything about the guest. I've never done that. If I feel unprepared, I cancel my interview. I reschedule the interview because I really believe in doing really great research. And I feel that if you don't do your research, you're really disrespecting the person's time that you're on the podcast with. And so to me, it's super important. And that's a snapshot of how I do my research.
Yeah. And you know what? That is absolutely amazing that you shared that because that brings up the concept of, people who feel like they're struggling and like their podcast isn't like getting off the ground, but they've got like 20 episodes and, like there's a lot of work that goes to getting into number one. Like I didn't even realize you did that much. And, I could tell because I listened to, a few of your podcasts plus the one with Chris Voss, which I thought was awesome. Like,
thanks.
how you dug into his career and like asked him like, what do you want to be? I can't remember exactly what he said. Something moved him into the FBI as a negotiator, but that was so cool. And
yeah, he's actually coming on again really soon. So
no
I'm
way.
excited for that. Yeah.
Cool. Wow. Awesome. So I'm guessing you have like a whole new host of questions to like tackle different areas.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen the research yet. He's probably like 5 interviews from now, but
yeah,
we're gonna take it from a different angle. It's gonna be on video this time. He's amazing. I've stayed in really close contact with him. So that's one of the benefits of podcasting. You get to make all these awesome relationships with super powerful people. And if I didn't have a podcast, I would never be talking to Chris Voss.
Yeah, that's awesome. So awesome, everyone! Like, stay tuned for that. There is going to be information in the description for the future. But stay tuned for that Chris Voss episode. The first one was really good, so I can only imagine how great this one's going to be. And also, okay, so can you talk a little bit about combining not just the management not just like the technical stuff of production, but also like that management element. And, how do you go from just being that individual who's like doing podcasts to, making a booming team that is, making it happen?
Yeah, so my team actually started off as fans that were very impressed with the show that wanted to help. And so Timothy Tan, who's actually my business partner and owns a piece of the company now, reached out to me episode number 2, and he went to the same college as me. He was younger than me. And he was like, I see what you're doing. I think what you're doing is awesome. I want to help in any way that I can. And so I brought him on, and then he recruited some of his other friends. And then other listeners from California reached out to me, in the UK, and even Estonia. He's no longer on the team, but like my web guy was a volunteer from Estonia who just was obsessed with the show. And that's how it started. It was just listeners who were really passionate, who were messaging me like, hey, I just want to learn about podcasting. I think what you're doing is awesome. I'm super impressed. I believe in your show. I think it's going to take off, and I want to be a part of it. And they would just volunteer and support my podcast. And I just grew a team. Now I have a team of 19. And I have other clients that I work on their podcast for them. This is very recent, as of the last month, where I have 3 other top podcasters where I'm doing all their podcast, audio production, video production, LinkedIn, social media. And I've got a team of 19 that helps me. And we're starting to really monetize what we're doing. And originally, monetization was not the goal. The goal was to help people and to just like grow our downloads, get sponsors. But now it's like turned into a business, which is really cool.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. So we're hearing this now, and I think it's so interesting to like be at the beginning of some of these stories. But like, I imagine that even based on what you just said, like 5 years from now, when you've got this massive like production, just imagining that it's going to be like, oh wow, she just appeared and created this
I know.
production company. But
I think that I'm on track. This might sound conceited, but I really believe it. I feel like I'm going to be the next Gary Vee, like in terms of VaynerMedia and him having a podcast and being a self-improvement guru. I feel like I really could be the next Gary Vee and really follow in his footsteps, or get bought out by VaynerMedia. Who knows?
Yeah, well, that sounds like an idea too. Either way, I mean, you definitely are on track as far as, I've had the opportunity to follow and, read about. So that's amazing. And, set your goals high. That's such an amazing story. So can you also go into, I guess, were you always like a media personality? Like, did you have to build into that, or was it, you just naturally had that and you were able to like, build on that?
I don't think anybody naturally has that. I feel that I did start this at a young age. So I did start in my first radio experience was in college on the college radio, and I had my own college radio show. And then I had online radio shows with the other DJs, like I told you, at Hot 97. And then I had online radio shows with my blog site and the Sorority of Hip Hop. So I had a lot of practice. And I think that practice is key. I had a lot of practice with podcasting and a lot of practice with writing. And I think those 2 things actually really go hand in hand. Because it's not only what you say, it's how you prepare. And so writing has a lot to do with it. Coming up with good content, I don't really script my podcast, but for intros, outros, coming up with really good questions is also a writing skill, And so I would say that, your direct question was again, sorry, I forgot your direct question.
Oh, the direct question was, did you feel like you were natural at
being
like a media
so no,
personality?
I think it was a lot of practice. I think that even when I started, like I told you, I took a 4-year break. I never thought I was going to get on a mic again. I was rusty when I first started. My first episode actually was amazing, but if you listen to like my tone, my pace, I had a lot of filler words. I would say, so I like forgot how to be a personality and how to talk on the mic right. And so it took a lot of practice. I had to slow down what I was saying. I had to speak more clearly. I had to open my mouth bigger and, be more animated in terms of the way that I spoke so that I would come out on the mic and people would connect with me. And so I think it's a lot of practice. And a lot of people think that they can hop on a mic as a podcaster and sound great. And that's not how it happens. You need to practice. And even for my team, a lot of them, I do this series called Yap Snacks. I haven't done one in a while, but I let some of my team co-host it with me. And before I let them do that, for almost 6 months, I had them recording practice episodes that just never went out, where they would just practice talking on the mic, because I don't want to have a show where you can't understand what the person is saying, or it's very obvious when somebody has not been practicing. And so I would definitely suggest that before you start a podcast, I would get on a mic and I would record a lot of test episodes. I would listen to your voice, listen to the clarity of your voice. I would see how well you do in terms of not saying ums and uhs when you're on the spot. I would, just listen to yourself over and over again and give yourself constructive feedback. Send it to your friends to give you constructive feedback, and practice, because I think that the quality of your voice and tonality is really important when you're starting a show.
That's amazing advice to, give something so actionable. The idea that, to do those test episodes, to, do the practice. And would you say going by the 10,000 hour rule, would you say you're fairly close to 10,000 hours, like being on a mic and all that, or?
Yeah, I definitely think
Yeah.
so after all this time. I definitely think so. Maybe not 10,000 hours on mic, but 10,000 hours working on production and podcasting for sure.
Yeah, and all of that totally comes together. Like the preparation from the writing, I didn't even really think about how that comes into play, in the sense of creating how your writing carries over into your speaking as well. So that's great as well. And also, so wow. And I was able to take away the idea that it hasn't been just about you, but also the team that you've brought in as well. The people that, from that sorority show to the leadership that you provided to help others also get involved in the show, and, have them jump on and do podcasts. So how has that turned out in helping the people grow? I mean, you did share a little bit about their stories, and, so you could tell when they haven't been practicing, whatever, but how have they given any feedback on it, or how have they had an opportunity to grow from that?
Yeah, well, I think some people have left the team and used that experience to get other jobs. So that's one way that they've grown from the team. Other people are getting paid now because we have clients, and now they're in a management position, leading other team members. And so they kind of stuck on for the ride and now are in more of a leadership position or getting equity, whatever it may be. And so they all ended up either gaining experience or gaining monetary gain, or gaining leadership experience. And so everybody kind of gets their own experience. Some of them are podcasters themselves, who are kind of newbies and don't necessarily have all the tools or the tactics, and learn from me that way, and then leverage that on their shows. So there's lots of different ways that people are benefiting. In terms of the social media, that's the other thing. I feel like I'm not just a podcast expert. I'm really a social media marketing expert, especially on LinkedIn and YouTube and things like that. And so I teach them tactics that they wouldn't learn in school, and then they can use them on their own profiles or with other clients, whatever it may be. And it's just like any internship. They gain the experience that they can either use to get a new job or end up getting hired at my company. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And so that also ties in very much to the concept of leadership. Can you share a little bit about your philosophy on leadership? Because you've been doing that for a while beyond just being the media personality. Because you mentioned you were going to be president at some point of that company leadership, although, it didn't go through, but.
Well, I was president for 2 years. So I have been president of a lot of things. So just to give your listeners some context into how many things I've led, like I said, I was president of the sorority, CEO and president of the Sorority of Hip Hop, the media agency / event company that I had when I was younger that had 50 girls. I was also president of the Young Employee Network at Hewlett Packard in New Jersey for 2 years. I was also president of my alumni association, and now I'm president of the Young and Profiting podcast. And then not to mention, when I was at Hot 97, I was leading a team. When now I'm at Disney Streaming, I'm leading a lot of teams. And so leadership is in my blood, and I didn't even want to have a young and profiting team. The funny thing is I was so scarred from the Sorority of Hip Hop and having all that pressure with the 50 girls and not getting the show and kind of not being able to really take that company off. I was really scarred, and I wanted young and profiting to be a solo endeavor. I was like, I don't want a team. I want to do it by myself. I don't ever want to feel that pressure again, that I owe anybody anything, and it's just like I wanted to do it on my own. But just I get so many solicits of people wanting to join the team, and I was growing so fast and I needed the help. So it naturally evolved. It wasn't actually premeditated in terms of a team for a young and profiting podcast. I wanted to do it on my own, which is funny. But in terms of my leadership skills, I'm really positive. I really believe in one-on-one support. I'm really into systems. We're very organized. We use Slack, we use G Suite, we use ClickUp for project management. It's not a joke to me, and I'm very hardworking. And so my team always knows that they're working hard, but Hala's working harder. And so I like to, lead by example. I'm working around the clock. If my team has a late night, I have a late night. I don't really, I'm in the trenches with them. I'm also really experienced. And so I'm fair. If somebody knows something better than me, then they're going to get rewarded for that financially, whatever it may be. If I'm the one teaching them, those people are rewarded by the experience and all the knowledge that I've gained over the years and kind of like insight that I really have. I feel like I'm one of the most knowledgeable people in terms of like podcasting and LinkedIn marketing. And for anything along those lines, I provide a lot of guidance and experience and one-on-one trainings that they would have to pay for, to like a course or whatever it is. And so I like to teach people things, and I grow their skills. I don't just give them mundane tasks. I challenge them and teach them and show them the way and really train them up, and level up their skills. So I really am a believer in terms of like mentorship, one-on-one relationships, really trying to make it meaningful for everyone, making sure that people are working on the things that they want to improve on so that they're leveling up their skills and not just doing mundane tasks. And that's how I lead the team. And my team is actually so positive and energetic and enthusiastic. And I think we've got a great company culture. Oh, I can't hear you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So you're applying like that concept of company culture, which is so valuable too, and it sounds like it's working from the that top down. Okay, and I'm glad you brought up the idea of having that mentorship as guidance, because like for people who maybe have not made a podcast, like there's so many things involved, from editing to posting on social media, to the branding, to getting the guests, and all of that is like a skill that requires either networking or technical or something else. So for you to be able to provide that mentorship to people, that's I would say a great leadership trait.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. I want to thank you for sharing all of your advice and going into your history, because this brings back the idea of, I would say even that 7-year rule, that 7 year, have you ever heard of that? How, a lot of people start to really shine after like 7 years of like being in things. Like Beyonce, she made her first video when she was like 7. And then, she jumped into Destiny's Child, so like almost 8 years later or something. And,
Oh, wow.
And like, there's a lot of stories like that where, Bill Gates, he had like a 7 to 10 year gap where he was like really building his stuff. So it's so interesting to, I don't know if Bill Gates' story is exactly like that. He started making computers when he was like 7 or 11, and then he like built companies. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's great to hear your story, starting in college and like, doing these podcasts and growing the team. I think I've had an interesting opportunity to be able to see and have your episode here, your interview at this moment in time, because it sounds like you're going even beyond podcasting now to take on the media and advertising world. So,
Yeah, it's really exciting. I feel like just now, I mean, I've been building up this podcast and we've had great momentum, but all of a sudden it's like my downloads are like skyrocketing and everybody is reaching out to me, like old coworkers, like, wow, I see you doing big things. It's amazing what you're doing. And when you're in it, you don't realize like, wow, something happened, some tipping point happened, some critical mass was achieved, because now all of a sudden I'm getting like a lot more attention, and that's really exciting. And I think that out of all the shows, this is definitely the most successful one. So so far, and I'm just really excited to see where I can take this.
Yeah, and you brought up the fact, I was going to ask you the question of, was there something that you felt was the thing that helped you reach that tipping point? But it sounds like you haven't really um,
No, it just
specified as much as it
happened.
is.
No,
Yeah.
it just happened, and it happened over quarantine. So maybe that was the tipping point. So something that I think about is I was always an international global team. We were always fully remote. I barely did in-person interviews. It was really always audio, video. And I think I was able to really like maximize being in quarantine. I got to like work a lot more. I have a full-time job, so somehow I'm able to have a just think about that, everybody out there. Time is not an excuse. I have a full-time career at Disney Streaming Services, a very difficult job, a very like intensive. I have to think a lot, and somehow I have a number one podcast. And not somehow, it's not an accident. I prioritize my time and I work my butt off at night, on the weekends, in the morning to make sure that I've got a great podcast. And basically, I just feel like I don't know, like it was just this extra time in quarantine that I was able to put into it. And all of a sudden I got so far ahead. And so definitely use your time wisely in quarantine. You could do a lot of awesome things with those extra couple of hours that you don't have to use for your commute anymore.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, thank you so much, because you've motivated me as well. Even though you didn't give like a, full like motivational and all that, your story itself, the fact that you have that full-time job and you're able to grow this podcast and you're able to like, have all these people around you who care about your podcast and everything, that in itself is motivation to do more, at least in
Thanks.
my opinion. And, I imagine that someone else listening to this is also inspired in that area too. So thank you so much for being on here. And what would be the next episode? What would be the best way to reach out to your podcast, or if they're interested in either being on a show?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm really picky with my guests. So I would say if you want to listen to Young and Profiting Podcast, you can find us on Apple, on Castbox, on SoundCloud, on YouTube. We're on all the major podcast platforms. Just search for Young and Profiting Podcast. You can also search for me on LinkedIn. It's Hala Taha. And I'm also on Instagram at Yap with Hala.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for being on, and thank you everybody for listening, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Emmett.